Welcome to another edition of Living with Purpose. Today I have this extraordinary gentleman who I met a few years ago, Sir Gabriele Pao-Pei Andreoli, who is at the Vatican, runs this Institute for AICS, is a author, has been really interested in this whole impact of technology, AI, metaverse, and its impact on society. He runs the World Changers Summit and is just somebody that is pushing the boundaries of our thinking of humanity and technology and how does that come together within the frame of also spirituality. So with that, Gabriele, welcome to Living with Purpose.
Thank you very much. I was always very impressed by your work as well. And, we were welcoming you in the Vatican. It was a great moment in the Pontifical Academy of Science for one of the first world changers we ever had. Our history goes back a little while, and I think we've been living with purpose. We've been trying, at least, with living with purpose.
Thank you very much. So let's start off with your journey. Talk about your childhood, where you grew up, where you were born, your family, and how did that shape your upbringing?
I was born in London in 1968. My family gave me a direction. And I believe everything happens for a reason. And it comes down to them giving me the name of Gabriele, which is the archangel, but also Pao-Pei, which means you gotta be happy in Polynesian. And of course, my family name is Andreoli. Even my family name is a whole story. My family originally came from Veneto, which is the very north part of Italy, was an ancient family. Then they moved to Liguria, where we had a castle in 1200. And then my father, his lineage came from the center of Italy, Emilia-Romagna, very well known in Italy for food, for tortellini, and he was involved with art. So from the very beginning, I had a name that kind of set me apart from the rest. Born in London, but then we moved to Italy and I lived in Rome for a very long time. And I was the only Pao-Pei around, so it was kind of unique. And immediately in my early childhood, I learned how brief life is, how everything is just temporary. Immediately, something happened into my life where it changed completely perspective. And I'd learned a few things from what happened to me. And it was a process where I realized what happened, but then it took me a lot of time to digest it fully and to really have the opportunity to understand that everything that happens in our life, no matter how hard, it is a great lesson. We do learn by trial and error.
Yeah.
And it's true, there is a part of us that pays the toll for that trial and error and for what happens. But it's also true that without that tragedy, without that impact into our life, there would be no evolution. And I always say we should evolve in unbalance. What I mean is balance in life is stagnation in nature, and stagnation is death. So we should never look for balance. We should always look for unbalance, for moving forward, for flourishing, but harmonize. So we should be harmonic with the whole around us, and especially with the people of the inner circle. We should harmonize with ourselves, with the universe, but always move forward, always be in balance. And this is a big battle I also started in London a few years ago when they started talking to me regarding sustainability. And to sustainability is a Latin word. It means to sustain, to oppose an equal force. And I said, no, I don't think I want to sustain anything. What I want to do, I want to flourish. I want to move forward. I want to make it better. And it's the same thing when people say, oh, you're resilient. And I say, no, I'm not a piece of wood. I'm not a system. I'm not resilient. I am anti-fragile. And the difference is resilience, again, is the quality of opposing an equal force to a threat. So to resist threat. But the truth is, if we're looking, and then I will get into what happened into my life, if you're looking into everything that is metabolic and it's alive, stress makes it better or destroys it. There is no balance. You cannot be resilient if you're a biological being. You become better So you overcome the stress or you die out of it. And now I get to what happened. I was 12 years old, as a matter of fact. And my mother came back one night and she told me, your father is sick. And in that moment, later on, I realized I was reading my mother's signals. And my mother, her body was telling me, what her expression was telling me, what her energy was telling me was, there is a great tragedy. I don't know how to transmit it to you, but she was transmitting it to me. So in that very moment, I said, well, let's go to my father. Let's go where he is, because I spoke to him just a few hours before, and he told me, I'm coming back home. Just eat, and then I'll be there. And I was like, no, Dad, I'll wait for you. And the morning after, I knew already that he was dead. I knew already something happened, because the way my mother, told me, the way my mother was going to protect me, I knew there was something, amiss in her behavior and with her way of communicating. Back then, I could not elaborate, but I was hurt, because then I realized that the only person that was there for me, that my parent, was lying to me, and my other parent was not there anymore. And so the morning after, she said to me, well, your father died last night, which I knew already, but I didn't know officially. And in that moment, she said, what do you want to do? And I said, I want to go to school. And here's another, strange fact, that I went to school that morning, and the teacher said, okay, did you do your homework? And I said, no, I didn't. And she was like, why? And I said, well, my father died. And because there was a schoolmate, and her father died too, a few months before, she thought I was picking on her, on my classmate, and she thought I was making fun of her. And I simply didn't do my homework. So she sent me to the dean. The dean said, well, you shouldn't behave like that. And then he called my family. Of course, he called my mother. And then he realized I was telling the truth, that my father was dead. What I'm trying to say here is that one single event had so many ripple effects in my life in a different way. My way of understanding life, something that you think it's there, is certain. It's, not questionable. And then it disappears from your life. Your guiding, course. I see my father as, as the person who was, maybe going to teach me how to shave, little things. Teach me, how to behave with, women, how to approach a woman, and how to share, some male, let's say, information. You don't have that anymore. So you start looking around. And I started rebelling against such a reality. I wrote a book a few years ago that was called The Best Possible Lie. The Best Possible Lie is, it's a way of processing also what I went through. My anger towards society. I had to find a reason why that happened. And at the very end, you realize there are things that are above you, that are bigger than you. And you cannot decodify everything in life. What you can do on the other side, you can make the best out of it. You can try to get the lesson. You have to somehow transcend. This is the title of my last book, is Transcend Quantum Computing, i.e. and the Future of Humanity. And it's also a way of saying, at one point, I transcended this impact in my life. I realized I was able to see how many different things have affected my life and to move forward. Many people say, oh, what a tragedy. It was a tragedy, but in the same time was a great lesson of life. And I always say, everything that has happened ever since, I was able to face it in a different perspective. Never saying, oh, why to me? Why it happened to me? I don't know why it happens. I know it happens. And I know I want to move forward. I want to learn to the fullest extent of whatever happens. I was a paratrooper. One time I had an accident, a very bad one. I broke all my bones. I thought I was going to die. I remember being in this field of wet grass in the middle of nowhere in a war zone, and the smell of grass and the sky. And I was just thought, maybe I'm not going to make it. But it is very important. Again, it was a great lesson to me, because you prepare for so many months to do one single action. and then you are in action. And then, something goes wrong and everything goes away. Everything goes south. And all that you planned somehow protects you, because as I was falling from the plane, and as my parachute didn't open quite at the right moment, I start thinking, oh my God, what am I going to do? And then at one point, training took over. I knew that in certain kind of situation, you have to react in a certain way. So that probably also helped me to understand not only the importance of training, but the importance of knowing, the importance of learning, of sharing. And it's probably, also the reason why we're having this conversation today, because it's not enough to know, it's not enough to learn, but it is important to share. It is important to make other people listen to you and listen to other people and become a community. And so again, I had to face cancer in the same way. And then I came back, I had cancer in my lungs. We didn't know, again, I didn't know if I was going to make it. In the process of the hospital, that they had to do surgery, they removed part of my lungs. It was very, it's heavy, because when you have a machine, allowing you to breathe and you don't know, and every time you breathe, you think it's normal to breathe. But ever since I've realized and I understood, the breathing is not, it is a natural process, but it is a very essential natural process. You're letting the outside universe inside you. And the way you breathe, and ever since I've been studying and learning how to breathe in different ways, that brought me also to yoga more deeply. I was already a martial artist, so I knew already meditation. I knew already, how to take care of my body. But that, whole experience really made me understand how important it is to breathe, how important it is to be in control of something that you believe is so natural. Many other times I broke my arms, I broke my legs. The other day I was hit by a moped.
Going back to some of the things, because you've shared so many important details, I just want our listeners to kind of reflect on a few things. This whole notion of resilience, because all of us talk about being resilient. But here you raised a very important question on that, and a reframing of how you think about resiliency versus being anti-fragile. And you've kind of shown your ability to be anti-fragile with all of the things that have gone in your life and your experience, which most of us don't experience, at least at that early age, or even, I've never jumped out of a plane and landed. So these are just enormous experiences. So talk a little bit about how have you trained your mind to actually not think about it as being resilient versus anti-fragile. So just talk a little bit about that.
How do you train yourself? Well, I think a very important role in my life was also sport. In sports, you understand the importance of moving your body and being able to achieve things. That got me also. My brother died. My brother was about 1 year old when my father died. And so he never really met my father. And he was very sick from a very early age. He developed a brain condition that little by little ate him away. He wasted away to the point where he was in bed and was paraplegic for about 15 years before dying. That also brought me to wanting to know more about life and understanding the biological functions we go through and how we developed our cellular system works. And that then helped me when I become a medical doctor, and that helped me to understand how the whole universe works. And see, when I'm talking about anti-fragility and harmonization and unbalance, it's because the truth is your body is the result of millions of years of evolution. And the funny part about this is that your body is 90% biology, meaning that, there are viruses, there are snails, there are, a fungus, there are, viruses. This is what you are composed of for 90% only 10% is what we consider to be human DNA. So our very body is an example of coexistence, is an example on how we harmonize with different creatures and how they harmonize and how they give their light every day so you can have a perfect skin, so you can have a functional organs. So it's a matter of harmonizing this incredible imbalance that every moment your body changes something, every moment, something happens. So this is for me, it's, going back to balance and to the fact that it's not homeostasis. Homeostasis in nature always tries to balance the temperature, and it never gets there. It's always an alternative mode. So nothing is really in balance. Everything keeps shifting. This is like concept of antifragility. Antifragility can only be there if we are ready to accept the continuous change that are in our body, the continuous imbalance there are around the universe. But in the meantime, the continuous connectivity of the whole system. This is why we're just launching this new project that is called the Multiverse of Trust. Because it's a multiverse, in nature is a multiverse. In technology is a multiverse. Now everybody's talking about artificial intelligence, but what artificial intelligence is an umbrella under which there are so many different technologies coming together. And it's not possible if we, in the meantime, don't elevate our spiritual side. We do not elevate our biological side. We cannot stay as a human being, as a living force. We cannot watch a computer all day and stay fit because it will destroy our metabolic body. So we need to understand there is not one way to go. It's like when people are telling me, oh, this organ is fundamental. Oh, this is the solution for longevity. We're in longevity. We're launching also a longevity lab and regenerative science. And I'm telling you, there is no one single magic pill. Longevity is coming together of so many forces, so many actions you have to take. And it's also a matter of love and loving others and being a community. And it's incredible the work they just did in Singapore. They became a blue zone by changing the way people relate to each other and families relate to each other. They come to the point that they became a blue zone. A blue zone, for, the ones they don't know, the blue zone is a place where you have a longer expectancy of life and a better life too. So again, we've seen how you become antifragile by not only, taking better food, by taking care of yourself, by doing sports, but also by how you come together in a community. And here I think, your work is so important again, because what you try to do is trying to build a community around good forces, around good meaning, around sharing information. And this is what we need more and more.
So, Gabriele, you've given us so much food for thought. Let me just ask one last question before we end. But let's talk about, you invited me to the Vatican for the World Changers Summit. I have to say it was one of the most amazing experience I've had. It was intellectually rich. It was spiritually invigorating. And you had the ability to be part of culture and art in a way that most people don't experience. You created this organization. Just talk a little bit about what you hope to achieve by bringing people together in this World Changers Summit.
Well, first, I want to pinpoint that we are of service. I never thought about the World Changer as a way of making money. It has to be anti-fragile in the way that it has to support itself. It has to be able to gather energy in order to keep promoting itself. And then this year we celebrated the 10th anniversary of the World Changer. It has been successful in that way, but it's also been successful in the way of connecting people, in bringing together a community, in finding new way of curing. Out of the World Changer came technology like the heat holographic information transfer that is capable of doing incredible stuff through electromagnetic fields We launched a project that was the cure of malaria. We brought it to Davos about 2 years ago. Through an electromagnetic fields, we can cure malaria. The whole project cost less than $200,000. And so when I see other organizations, and I don't want to mean, I don't want to blame anyone, spending tens of millions of dollars and not coming up with a solution, I'm wondering, what is so special about the World Changers? But I guess you are all very special individuals. So now we're tackling with the Institute for Advanced Studies and Cooperation. We're tackling different, scientific diplomacy. We have a project on scientific diplomacy. We're working on quantum. We're now going to announce a very good coming together of courses and energy with other big organizations. We launched the Regenerative and the Longevity Lab, where we, study cutting-edge technologies for health. We just partnered with the Cabana Group, and through them, we're, working on something that is called immortal energy. It's a quantum system that uses the shape of the Earth and the magnetic fields to produce unlimited energy. And as we work on that, we're also working on a project that it's very advanced in artificial intelligence blending with the cure of about everything. So there are so many projects. And now we're launching, as I said to you, the Metaverse of Trust, which is geared up towards parents and youngsters and make them understand how is the relationship with technology and what we should do. So there are so many things that we're, gearing up to do, but always as a service. I'm a Catholic, but we signed an agreement with ICESCO, which is, a very important organization bringing together the 54 Islamic countries. We work with, we work with everyone. We don't care about your religion, your color, your whatever. What we want is good people coming together, and it could be, sometimes it's the Vatican where you've been, sometimes it's, it's an opera house, sometimes, but always a beautiful place where people feel connected by art, by meaning, by energy, that it shapes the way we are together and the way then they also come together and the way from there so many ideas have sprouted and changed the world. So this is why it's called the World Changers.
This is such a wonderful way to end. You are in the business of creating movements towards humanity in all facets. So what a rich conversation. Let's end with you just talking a little bit about the importance of purpose and your one word of wisdom that you would like to share with our audience.
For me, the purpose of my life is of serving people that are greater than me and serving the bigger picture. And things are just happening. I was with Sri Gurudev. He's the founder of Art of Living. Millions of people coming together. And he has a huge organization around him. And he said, "You're not your desires." And to me, that was a big turning point because many times we think, oh, I would love to do this. I would love to do that. And I want to do this and I want to do that. And I stopped doing that. What I do is I walk my path, I share with people. And as we move along, we find purpose in everything. The little thing or the big thing, in helping, an old lady to cross the street or, in paying the rent, or for many years I was in Opus Dei, the opera, as we call it. The main message of Maria Scrivara Balaguer was, sanctify yourself in whatever you do in your work. So every single thing we do, we have to think of the purpose. We have to think to serve, our brothers and sisters. And this is, I think, is the greatest message of all. We're here to be part of the whole world and universe.
I love this thing, sanctify yourself. You walk the path and let others join with you, and small things of goodness happen. And if you actually do that, you are living a life of purpose. Thank you so very much for being part of this podcast. Again, purpose is that renewable source of energy that continues to drive humanity forward. Find your purpose, sanctify yourself, walk the path, flourish. I love the word flourish. It is about harmony, it is about flourishing, and it is about anti-fragility. These are some wonderful concepts, the new way of looking at the world. Professor Gabriele, thank you so very much for being part of this journey with us.
Thank you for having me. And we're already living with purpose, one with serving a cause. Thank you again. Good luck with all you're doing. And we hope to work with you as the Institute and as the world changers.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you.